Hey everyone, gather around. We've decided you're no longer useful to us, Trevor announced, his voice dripping with amusement as he gestured toward me like I was some kind of circus attraction. The break room fell silent. 17 pairs of eyes turned to watch what would happen next. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. I was 39 years old, single, and had just been publicly humiliated in front of my entire team at Henderson and Clark Marketing Solutions. The company I'd helped build from a struggling startup into a multi-million-dollar operation over the past 8 years. Oh, I said, setting down my cup carefully. Is that so? Trevor's grin widened. He was 28, fresh from business school, and had been installed as my manager 3 months ago by the new ownership group. His expensive suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. Yeah, man. We're restructuring. Bringing in younger talent, fresh perspectives. You know how it is. He shrugged, playing to the crowd. Don't worry though, we'll keep you around for a bit. Train your replacement, and all that. Someone laughed nervously. I recognized the sound. It was Brandon from Design, who I'd mentored through his first year. I see. I replied, my voice steady. Well, thank you for letting me know. Trevor looked almost disappointed by my reaction. He'd wanted a scene, something to establish his dominance. Instead, I smiled politely, picked up my coffee, and walked back to my desk. My hands didn't shake until I sat down. 8 years. I'd given this company 8 years of my life. 60-hour weeks. Weekends spent fixing campaigns that were falling apart. Client relationships I'd built from nothing. The entire West Coast portfolio was mine. I developed it, nurtured it, grown it from 3 small accounts to 47 major clients, generating $8.3 million in annual revenue. But apparently, I was no longer useful. I opened my email and started typing. The thing about being good at your job is that you make it look easy. You handle crises so smoothly that people forget there even was a crisis. You maintain relationships so effortlessly that nobody realizes how much work goes into every conversation, every check-in, every carefully crafted solution. Trevor had no idea what I actually did. To him, I was just some old guy who showed up, made phone calls, and collected a paycheck. He didn't know about the complex web of relationships, processes, and institutional knowledge that kept everything running. He was about to find out. I finished my shift at 6 p.m. Trevor had already left. He never stayed past 5. I methodically went through my files, deleting nothing but making note of what I'd need to reference in my resignation letter. Then I drafted it, simple and professional. Dear Mr. Henderson, please accept this letter as formal notification of my resignation from Henderson and Clark Marketing Solutions, effective immediately. Per my contract, I am providing the required 48-hour notice. Thank you for the opportunity to work with the company. I will ensure all necessary handoff materials are prepared. Sincerely, my signature. I scheduled it to send at 11 p.m. Late enough that nobody would see it until morning, but early enough that it would hit their inboxes before they arrived. Then I went home and had the best night's sleep I'd had in months. The next morning, I woke up to 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. I made myself breakfast first. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. I took my time, watching the sun rise over the city from my small apartment balcony. My phone kept buzzing like an angry hornet. Finally, around 9 a.m., I picked it up. 12 missed calls from Trevor. 8 from Richard Henderson, the CEO. 3 from Patricia in HR. The rest were from various colleagues and team members. The texts were frantic. Trevor, call me now. Trevor, this is completely unprofessional. Trevor, you can't just quit without notice. Trevor, we need you to come in today. I almost laughed at that one. I'd given notice, 48 hours, as required by my contract. It wasn't my fault Trevor didn't know what that contract said. Richard's messages were more measured, but no less urgent. We need to talk. Please call me as soon as possible. I called Patricia in HR first. She was professional, courteous, and clearly reading from a script. We received your resignation, she said carefully. Mr. Henderson would like to discuss transition planning. Would you be available to come in today? My contract requires 48 hours notice for resignation, I said calmly. That's Wednesday at 11 p.m. I'll be available tomorrow to discuss any necessary handoff materials, but not today. There was a pause. I see. And you're certain about this decision? Completely. May I ask what prompted this? I could have been petty. Could have mentioned Trevor's little performance in the break room. Could have aired every grievance I'd accumulated over the past 3 months under new management. Instead, I said, I feel it's time to explore new opportunities. I'm sure you understand. She did. Patricia had been with the company since the beginning. She'd watched the new ownership group systematically undermine and push out the original team members. I was just the latest casualty, except I was jumping before they could push. I understand, she said quietly. I'll note this in your file. Mr. Henderson still wants to speak with you. I'm available tomorrow, as stated. Thank you, Patricia. I hung up and silenced my phone. Then I went for a walk. It was a beautiful Tuesday morning, the kind of day where the air is crisp and everything feels possible. I walked through the park, bought a coffee from my favorite cafe, and sat on a bench watching people rush past on their way to jobs they probably hated. I didn't hate my job. I'd actually loved it once. Before the acquisition, before the new ownership brought in their golden boys and started treating veteran employees like disposable commodities. The acquisition had happened 8 months ago. Henderson and Clark had been struggling financially. Richard had made some bad investments, expanded too quickly, and suddenly we were hemorrhaging money. The ownership group came in with promises of stability and growth. They'd keep the original leadership, they said. Value the existing team, they said. 3 months in, they started installing their own people in key positions. Trevor was one of 5 strategic hires meant to modernize our approach. What that actually meant was pushing out anyone over 35 and replacing them with recent graduates who'd work for less money and wouldn't question decisions. I'd seen it coming. So had most of the original team. We'd watched colleagues get restructured out, one by one. The writing was on the wall. But I'd stayed because of the clients. Because I believed in the work. Because I'd built something I was proud of. Then Trevor pulled his little stunt in the break room, and I realized something important. My loyalty was being taken for granted. They assumed I'd just accept whatever treatment they dished out because I needed the job. They were wrong. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the day. I ignored it. Around 5 p.m., someone knocked on my apartment door. It was Richard Henderson himself. May I come in? He asked. He looked tired, older than his 52 years. The stress of the acquisition was showing. I stepped aside and let him enter. My apartment was modest, 1 bedroom, simple furniture, nothing fancy. Richard's eyes swept across it, and I saw something like guilt flash across his face. He knew how much I'd sacrificed for the company while taking a below-market salary because I believed in what we were building. Coffee, I offered. Please. We sat in my small living room. 2 men who'd once been partners in building something meaningful, now on opposite sides of a divide neither of us had wanted. You could have talked to me, Richard said finally. Before resigning. We could have worked something out. Could we have? I asked. You were in that break room. You heard what Trevor said. Richard's face darkened. I heard about it. I wasn't there. And Trevor has been severely reprimanded. Reprimanded. Not fired. He's young. He made a mistake. He didn't understand. He understood perfectly. I interrupted. He was establishing dominance. Making it clear that the old guard isn't welcome anymore. That was the point. Richard set down his coffee cup. The new ownership wants results. They want efficiency. Trevor was brought in to streamline operations, not to disrespect valued employees. And yet here we are. You're my entire West Coast portfolio, Richard said, his voice strained. 47 clients who trust you personally. Do you understand what happens if you walk away? I do. Do you? The silence stretched between us. Tell me what you want, Richard said finally. More money? A different position? We can move you out from under Trevor. Give you autonomy. I want to be treated with basic respect, I said. And that's not something you can promise anymore. It's not about you, Richard. It's about the culture that new ownership is creating. Yesterday was just the final confirmation of what I already knew. So that's it. 8 years, and you're just done? 8 years, and I'm finally putting myself first. Richard stood up, his shoulders slumped. You're right. About all of it. I'm sorry it came to this. I really am. I know you are. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. The West Coast clients. Will you at least help with the transition? Many of them will want to follow you wherever you go. It was a loaded question. Legally, I couldn't solicit clients. But Richard knew as well as I did that clients chose to work with people, not companies. If they reached out to me, that was their choice. I'll prepare detailed handoff notes on every account, I said. Process documentation, contact information, ongoing projects. Everything. Trevor will need to maintain those relationships. After that, what clients choose to do is up to them. Richard nodded slowly. He understood what I was really saying. I'd fulfill my professional obligations, but I wouldn't actively prevent clients from leaving if they wanted to. Fair enough, he said. For what it's worth, you deserved better than this. We both did. After he left, I finally looked at my phone. 73 messages now. I scrolled through them. noting the evolution from angry demands to worried questions to desperate pleas. One stood out. It was from Nathan, the company's chief financial officer and one of the few original team members still in a leadership position. Drinks tonight? My treat. I think we need to talk. I met Nathan at Connor's Pub, a quiet place near the office where the old team used to gather after big wins. He was already there, 2 beers on the table. You caused quite a panic, Nathan said as I sat down. Wasn't really my intention, wasn't it? He smiled slightly. Come on. You knew exactly what would happen when you resigned without any warning. I gave the required notice. Technically, yes. But you also scheduled your resignation email to hit after hours so nobody could try to stop you before it became official. He had me there. I took a drink of my beer. Trevor's been crying in his office all day, Nathan continued. Literally crying. He called his contact at the ownership group, who reamed him out for 30 minutes. Apparently, losing you and potentially your entire client portfolio doesn't align with their Q4 projections. Not my problem anymore. No, it's not. Nathan leaned back. Between you and me, for more people are planning to resign this week. Your departure gave them the courage to jump ship. The new ownership's modernization strategy is collapsing in real time. I hadn't expected that. Who? Can't say. But they're all original team members who've been waiting for the right moment. You pulling off a clean exit showed them it's possible. I just got tired of being disrespected in my own workplace. And you handled it perfectly. Professional, unassailable, and utterly devastating to them. Nathan raised his glass. Respect. We clinked glasses. So what's next for you? Nathan asked. Honestly, I'm not sure. I've got some savings. I'll take a few weeks to decompress and start looking. Maybe freelance consulting. Several clients have already reached out. Word travels fast. Nathan's expression turned serious. The client exodus has already started. 3 called today to say they're terminating their contracts. 2 more are evaluating their options. Trevor tried to do damage control and apparently made things worse. He told one client that you were outdated and their account would be better served by fresh thinking. I winced. Which client? Silverstein Tech. Oh no. Silverstein was my biggest account, $1.2 million annually. The CEO, David Silverstein, was notoriously loyal but had zero tolerance for disrespect. What did David say? According to reports, he said, that man saved my company's brand during the product recall crisis. He's earned more loyalty from me than your firm has. Send me the contract termination paperwork by end of day, or my lawyers will. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pride that the relationships I'd built were strong enough to survive my departure. Guilt that my leaving was hurting Richard. Satisfaction that Trevor was learning exactly how much damage his arrogance had caused. Richard came to see me today, I said. He looked broken. Richard's a good man who made a bad deal with the devil. He was desperate when he sold to that ownership group. Now he's watching everything he built get dismantled by kids in expensive suits who've never actually built anything themselves. You're still there, though. Nathan shrugged. For now, I'm CFO. They need me to keep the books clean while they strip the company for parts. But I'm not staying long. I've already got feelers out. We drank in companionable silence for a while. You know what the worst part is? Nathan said eventually. Trevor actually believes he did nothing wrong. He thinks you're just being oversensitive and unprofessional. He told Richard you were probably going to resign eventually anyway because older workers struggle with modern workplace dynamics. Modern workplace dynamics, I repeated. Is that what we're calling basic human decency now? Apparently. My phone buzzed. Another message, this time from a client, Michelle at Redwood Industries. Heard you left H&C. Are you taking clients? We'd like to work with you directly. I showed Nathan the message. He wasn't surprised. It's going to be a bloodbath, he said. Henderson and Clark will be lucky to keep 1/3 of your accounts. Trevor's completely out of his depth, and the ownership group is too arrogant to admit they need to bring in someone competent. They could promote internally. There are good people still there. None of Trevor's golden boys. And that's all they care about, keeping their people in power. Nathan finished his beer. You did the right thing, walking away. Sometimes the only winning move is not to play. The next day, I went into the office to fulfill my transition obligations. The atmosphere was funeral. People barely looked at me, though several gave small nods of respect as I passed. I'd prepared comprehensive documentation on every client account, contact histories, communication preferences, ongoing projects, potential issues, and strategic recommendations. Everything Trevor would need to maintain those relationships. Everything except the intangible stuff, the trust built over years, The understanding of each client's unique needs, the instinct for when to push and when to give space. Trevor couldn't learn that from documentation. He was waiting in his office, our old shared space that he'd had redecorated the week after he arrived. Gone were the team photos and project highlights. Now it was all minimalist chrome and motivational posters about disruption and innovation. "You're late," Trevor said without looking up from his laptop. I checked my watch. 9:03 a.m. Traffic. "Should we go over the client handoff?" "I've already reviewed your documentation. It's adequate." Adequate. 8 years of institutional knowledge, reduced to adequate. "There are some nuances that aren't in the written notes," I said carefully. "For example, David Silverstein prefers calls to emails, but only between 2 to 4 p.m. his time. He'll ignore emails entirely if they come in the morning. And Margaret Shun at Pacific Holdings needs data in specific formats. She'll reject proposals that don't match her style, even if the content is solid." Trevor waved a hand dismissively. "I've been managing client relationships since you were still using flip phones. I think I can handle a few personality quirks. I'd gotten my first smartphone in 2008. Trevor would have been about 13 then, but I didn't point that out. "What about the Silverstein situation?" I asked. "Have you reached out to smooth things over?" "That's been handled." I sent a very professional email explaining our new service model and assuring him of our continued commitment to excellence. My heart sank. "You sent David Silverstein an email. Is there a problem with that?" "I just told you. He doesn't read emails. He'll consider it disrespectful that you didn't call." "Well, maybe it's time he joined the 21st century," Trevor said with a smirk. "Emails are more efficient." There was no point continuing. Trevor was determined to do things his way, convinced his business school theories would overcome decades of relationship-building fundamentals. "Is there anything else you need from me?" I asked. "No. You can go." Just like that. 8 years, dismissed with 3 words. I walked back to my desk, technically not my desk anymore, and found a small crowd gathered. These were people I'd worked with, trained, supported through their own challenges. Some of them had tears in their eyes. "We got you something," said Beth from Creative. She handed me a card signed by 32 people, basically everyone who wasn't part of Trevor's new regime. Inside were messages of thanks, appreciation, and solidarity. Several people had written their personal contact information, adding for future opportunities. "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved. "All of you. It's been an honor." "You're really leaving?" asked Chris from the media buying team. He'd been my direct report for 5 years. "I really am." If you start your own thing, can we reach out?" I chose my words carefully. I can't actively recruit anyone while you're still employed here. But if you ever decide to make a change, I'll always take your call. The meaning was clear. Several people nodded. Patricia from HR appeared, professional and detached. "I need to walk you out. Company policy for resignations." As if I might steal something on my way out. It was insulting, but I understood. She was just doing her job. I packed the few personal items from my desk. A photo of my parents, a trophy from our best campaign year, a coffee mug that said, "World's okayest marketer," that the team had given me as a joke. Everything else, the awards, the client gifts, the accumulation of 8 years, I left behind. Walking out through the office one final time felt surreal. This place had been my second home. I'd been here for birthdays, celebrations, crises, and countless late nights fixing problems. Now I was just another former employee being escorted to the door. Richard was waiting by the elevator. "Good luck," he said simply, shaking my hand. "You'll land on your feet. You always do. So will you, Richard. You're a survivor." "Sometimes I wonder if that's a good thing," he said quietly. Then the elevator arrived, and I stepped inside. The doors closed on that chapter of my life. I spent the next week fielding calls from clients. Legally, I had to tread carefully. I couldn't solicit business from Henderson and Clark's accounts. But if clients reached out to me first, that was different. By the end of week 1, 11 clients had terminated their contracts with Henderson and Clark and approached me about working together directly. By the end of week 2, it was 19. I wasn't actively seeking them out. Word simply spread. Trevor's professional approach wasn't landing well. His emails went unanswered. His calls went unreturned. Clients who'd spent years building relationships with me didn't appreciate being assigned to someone who clearly viewed them as just revenue numbers on a spreadsheet. Nathan called with updates, his tone mixing professional concern with barely suppressed amusement. 24 accounts now, he reported. Trevor's having daily panic attacks. The ownership group brought in a crisis consultant who took one look at the situation and recommended they try to hire you back at any price. Not interested. I told them that. They didn't believe me. Apparently, they think everyone has a price. They're right. Everyone does. Mine just happens to be basic human respect, which they can't afford. Nathan laughed. The consultant also recommended they fire Trevor immediately. The ownership group refused. They're more concerned with saving face than saving the company. That's their choice. 4 more employees resigned yesterday. Beth and Chris from your old team, plus 2 people from account management. They all cited hostile work environment in their exit interviews. I felt a pang of guilt. I never wanted to cause this kind of chaos. You didn't cause it. You just stopped pretending everything was fine. There's a difference. By week 3, I'd officially registered my own consulting firm. Nothing fancy, just me, working from home, serving clients who'd chosen to follow me. The overhead was minimal. The stress level was practically zero compared to my old job. And the revenue? Already approaching what I'd made annually at Henderson and Clark, with a fraction of the headache. I was in my home office, really just my dining room table with a laptop, when Richard called one final time. I thought you should know, he said. Trevor was terminated today. The ownership group finally admitted defeat. How's he taking it? About as well as you'd expect. He threatened to sue for wrongful termination, claimed he was scapegoated for systemic problems, the whole 9 yards. Was he scapegoated? Richard paused. Yes and no. The systemic problems were real. But Trevor's arrogance turned a manageable situation into a catastrophe. If he'd listened to you, learned from you, things might have been different. What about you? I'm stepping down next month. The ownership group is dissolving Henderson and Clark and absorbing what's left into their portfolio. It's over. The finality in his voice was heartbreaking. Richard, I'm sorry. Don't be. You saw the writing on the wall and got out. I ignored it and stayed too long. That's on me. He exhaled slowly. For what it's worth, I'm proud of what we built together. Even if it didn't last. It lasted 8 years. That's not nothing. No, it's not nothing. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. A month ago, I'd been a salaried employee at a company slowly destroying itself. Now I was running my own operation, working with clients who chose to work with me, making more money with less stress. All because Trevor decided I was no longer useful. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed. Another client inquiry, this one from someone I'd never worked with before. They'd heard about me through David Silverstein and wanted to discuss a potential project. I smiled and started typing a response. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success and happiness and the simple satisfaction of knowing you made the right choice, even when everyone else thought you were crazy. Trevor's little performance in that break room was supposed to humiliate me, to put me in my place. Instead, it freed me. It showed me what I'd been too loyal to see, that the place I'd given everything to no longer valued what I brought to the table. Walking away wasn't giving up. It was giving myself permission to build something better. 3 months later, I was running a thriving consultancy with 32 clients and growing. I'd hired 3 former Henderson and Clark employees, Beth, Chris, and Nathan, who finally made his exit. We worked remotely, kept overhead low, and treated each other with the respect we'd been denied at our old company. Richard reached out occasionally. He'd started his own thing too, a boutique marketing firm focused on ethical business practices. We'd grab coffee a few times, 2 veterans of the same war, comparing notes on life after corporate dysfunction. As for Trevor, I heard through the grapevine that he'd bounced around between several companies, always leaving or being forced out within months. Turns out that business school credentials only get you so far when you lack basic interpersonal skills. I never did learn if he figured out what went wrong that day in the break room. Probably not. Some people never do. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I was too busy being useful to clients who appreciated me, to employees I respected, and most importantly, to myself. And honestly, I'd never been happier. The moral of the story isn't complicated. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When a workplace stops valuing your contributions, stop contributing. And when someone tells you you're no longer useful, thank them politely, because they just gave you permission to build something better. Sometimes the best response to disrespect isn't anger or revenge. It's success. And watching from a distance as everything you predicted would happen, happens exactly as you knew it would. That's not schadenfreude. That's just gravity.